Today, I thought it'd be fun to take a look back at the 2020 NHL draft. Some of the players in that draft class are certainly off to flying starts in the career. Some high picks have stalled in their development a little bit. And I think if we had a chance to redo this and have a redraft, if you will, things might look a little bit different. So today, we're going to review the original draft and how things might look today, and a new redraft for the top 10 picks. And that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned today, we're going to do an NHL redraft to the 2020 NHL draft class. We're going on 3 years. Many of these players are completing their ELCs, the ones that get to the NHL quickly at least. Some are still earlier on in their development. They all have different paths to get there. And you know what? If we redo this again in another couple of years' time, for example, or even a year from now, it could look different again as these players continue to improve, develop, and get bigger roles with their teams, etc. But I think it's fair to say, if we were able to redraft today, that there would certainly be a new number one draft pick for sure, and there would certainly be a different looking landscape of the NHL and a different looking whole thing here, because I think it would change quite substantially. Now, first, before we do the redraft, take a look at how things originally went down. I'm going to show the top 20 picks and discuss them very quickly and their stats, just so you can get an idea of some of the players that may move up and down within my new redraft. So let's take a look here at the original picks. Originally, the number one overall consensus draft pick for the most part was Alexis Lafreniere, who went to the New York Rangers. So far, Lafreniere's put up 80 points in 191 NHL games. I'm not really sure that he would be the consensus number one now for redoing this, but at the same time, I do still think he's a very talented player with a very bright future. And Lafreniere, I don't think it's entirely his fault that he ended up on a team that was able to retool very quickly and still had a good amount of depth on it before he arrived. So he's kind of stuck as the third line winger for the side of the ice that he plays on. So, I mean, that's tough, right? So, obviously, for the most part, you see the Rangers playing like the kid line with him and Kakko and Hedl, generally speaking, is their third line. So, if he had a bigger role with another team, these numbers might look different. But the number two pick went to L.A., they took Quinton Byfield. Now, Byfield's development certainly hasn't been as quick as a lot of people had thought. I personally thought, based on what we had seen of Byfield going into the draft, that he might have been the most NHL-ready player based on his size and strength. Obviously, there are aspects of his game needed to get worked on for sure. I didn't think it was a given he'd go straight to the NHL, especially, again, on a Kings team, with the Kings and Rangers getting the top two picks. They weren't exactly teams that were, you know, at the very bottom of a rebuild or beginning of a rebuild where you could instantly get top six minutes. You know, that's a big role. Plays a big difference here. But so far, Byfield's appeared in 75 games and put up 23 points, which isn't the greatest. But again, like Lafreniere, he hasn't really been able to play consistently, and he hasn't been able to play a big role in a top six consistent manner. So we'll see what the future holds for both these guys. I think there's still lots of talent there, but it's going to take some time, I think, before they explode onto the scene and show their full potential. The number three pick was Ottawa's Timmy Stutzle, who's put up 146 points in 184 games, on pace now in his third season to be over a point-per-game player, likely going to surpass the 90-point mark, and just signed a new long-term lucrative deal with Ottawa at the beginning of the year. So right now, the number three pick certainly looks to be head and shoulders above the rest for production. Number four pick was Lucas Raymond in Detroit. 90 points in 132 games. Again, very solid development, really good production. The pick's looking pretty good. The number five pick was Jake Sanderson. Now, the numbers there are different because he's a defenseman, and he also spent 2 years in college after the draft. So you can't really compare these exactly apples to apples here because it's not really the case. But he's appeared in 51 games so far, most of which are this year. I got into a little bit of games at the end of last season, put up 21 points. But he's already arguably the top, probably one or two defensemen on the team, playing big minutes, very responsible, and getting the defensive zone cleared. He's not really for a rookie defenseman. We should say that he's just not really weak defensively, which is a common thing. Usually, a lot of these top drop D-men, they come in offensively. They're good puck movers, good skaters, and usually the defensive zone needs the most work. And I'm not saying he doesn't need work, but he's further along than we've seen a lot of rookie defensemen. Next up, we have Anaheim, number 6, with Jamie Drysdale, who's about 40 points in 113 games. Again, so far, defensemen do develop differently than forwards, and he's developing nicely. I think he's got a bright future in Anaheim. He may go, similar area of the draft, or a little lower perhaps than a redraft. The Devils took Alexander Holt, the number 7 pick. His development's been a little bit disappointing, I'm going to say. 6 points in 28 games is not where we thought we'd see him 3 years later. So I know he's a player that would like to have more opportunity for sure. Number 8 pick was Jack Quinn in Buffalo, put up 25 points in 50 games. Lots of potential there too. I think he just needs a little more time to really progress and develop. But, a half a point per game rate in his first 50 games is not bad at all. And the Sabres are becoming a deeper team with lots of young talent. So I do think the future is bright for Jack Quinn. Number 9, we have Minnesota taking Marco Rossi. That's been a disappointment so far. I know this first draft plus 1 year was largely COVID related. COVID hit him hard. It really set him back. And I wonder if it's still having any kind of longer term effects on him. He's only appeared in 18 NHL games, putting up 1 point. Hasn't really seen NHL action much at all this year. I don't think he's had any actually. So that point, I'm not saying he's going to be a bust. It's too early to say that, but it's concerning to say the least. The Jets at number 10 took Cole Perfetti, who's off to a good start. Again, like some of these other guys, like Sanderson, for example, was a little bit longer getting the regular role in the NHL, but thriving nicely now in a top 6, usually top 9 role. 37 points in 69 games, so that's looking pretty good. 11 was the Predators taking goalie Yaroslav Askarov. Askarov has only appeared in 1 NHL game. That's not a big deal. Goalies always take longer, and he's thriving in the American Hockey League, looking primed to get to the NHL soon. The Panthers at number 12 took Anton Lundell. Definitely would go higher now. 71 points in his first 116 games. The Canes took Seth Jarvis at number 3. That turned out to be a great pick. 70 points in his first 124 games. Went straight to the NHL as well. So a couple of players that I think would definitely go higher today. The Oilers at number 14 took Dylan Holloway. Of course, also played some college hockey like Jake Sanderson. So again, not a typical easier comparison here, but he's appeared in 51 games so far with 9 points. But again, a deep team up front for the Oilers with the likes of McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins and Hyman, etc. His role is reduced, so you have to take that with a grain of salt as well. The Leafs at number 15 took Rodion Amirov. Of course, he's not appeared in the NHL yet and has encountered some severe health complications, so we certainly hope everything's going well with Amirov. And it's hard to evaluate that pick right now with the lack of hockey and the health issues, but certainly he was a very talented kid at that point, so you have to think the future is still bright. Number 16, Montreal took rugged defenseman Caden Gooley, who's been able to get into the NHL and make some impacts this year. Fortunately, suffered an injury, but 36 games, 14 points so far. Not bad. Looks like he could be a real solid top 4 defenseman for sure, maybe even top pair. Looks like he could be a real good find for Montreal, so that's a great pick so far, even though the games are a little bit limited. Chicago at 17 took Lucas Reichel. They're kind of taking him the slow route in the American Hockey League. He was certainly one of their better forwards in training camp, looks like. They still got him to go to the AHL. 4 points in 15 games. The Devils at 18 took Dawson Mercer with another first rounder they had. Mercer's looking way further ahead than Holtz, for example, already getting in 139 games, putting up 77 points. That's a big find at that late in the draft, and certainly having a solid career so far. 19, the Rangers took Braden Schneider. Not going to wow you with the offensive numbers, but he's got 100 games in already on a third pair defenseman, has really grabbed that role and solidified it. So 26 points is not a lot, but that's not really his role in New York. Like Sanderson, the points aren't going to wow you, but it's everything else that he does well. That's impressive so far. And then number 20, the Devils took Muka Madulin as well, who was yet to appear in an NHL game, but obviously there's still time for things like that to come around. Now, for the redraft portion, let's jump into that, and I'll tell you who I think would go. Number 1 right now to me definitely would be Ottawa Senators top centerman Timmy Stutzle. Of course, I get that pick from the San Jose Sharks in the Erik Karlsson trade. It's worked out wonderfully. He's turned out to be a stud centerman. Like I said, in his 3rd season, already putting up at a 90-point pace as I record this video. Extremely dynamic player with all kinds of skill and talent. Great chemistry with Brady Tkachuk. And if you could predict the future, I don't think there's any doubt that Timmy would go number 1 in a redraft here today. At number 2, I have Lucas Raymond. Lucas Raymond went to the Detroit Red Wings at number 4. Is having a solid run. To me right now, he would probably go in the number 2 spot. I think there's a couple of players you could debate might be in that spot. even Jake Sanderson, or maybe even Lafreniere to some degree. But right now, I think Lucas Raymond is just a little further along in his development and has had more NHL time than those guys have played a bigger role. That's why I have him here at number 2. But can you imagine Timmy Stutzle in the Rangers organization and Lucas Raymond in LA, how things would look incredibly different here today? At number 3, I have Jake Sanderson. Sanderson, like I said, has turned out to be a potential stud defenseman for the Senators. 2 years of college hockey, so the NHL stats are not overwhelming just yet, but his brief sample size has shown he already went from being a rookie defenseman to the Senators. There were points this year where he was looked upon as being the top defenseman. Besides Thomas Chabot, he often logs the most minutes. Very responsible, very reliable. It will be a huge part of that team moving forward for sure. At number 4, I have the former number 1 overall pick, Alexis Lafreniere. So Lafreniere in this draft would go to Detroit. Of course, like I said, Sanderson I put at number 3 would still go to the Senators. Lafreniere at number 4 in Detroit would certainly be different. I think he'd get a chance to play a bigger role, and he might be thriving in a higher level offensively. Hard to say, but I mean, Lafreniere, like I said, it's not entirely his fault that he ended up in the Big Apple on the Rangers team, which really, at the time, kind of got a little bit lucky in the draft lottery, and at the same time, they weren't a team starting fresh like you often see with number 1 overall picks. A lot of times they go to a team that's at the bottom basement, beginning of a rebuild, that type of thing. That was not the case, and I think his numbers might suffer because of it, but it makes the Rangers a better team as well. At number 5, we're going with Quinton Byfield, the number 2 former overall pick. Going from, you obviously went to LA the first time around, I'd have him going to Ottawa now. So Ottawa this time around will get Sanderson and Byfield this way. Obviously, I don't think that the Senators would want to trade Timmy for Byfield, no offense to him. But based on Stutzle's development so far, I just don't think it's fair to compare the two, at least not today. Maybe someday, because Byfield does have that number 1 center potential. I mean, he's still there. Just a matter of bringing it all out. He's a big guy. He's got lots of skill, and we'll see what he can do to figure things out. But Byfield so far, like I said, in his brief career, 23 points in 75 games is not the most impressive, but you get a look at the role he's been given here as well. It certainly plays a big factor. Same thing goes for Lafreniere. Number 6 was the Anaheim Ducks pick, and I have them again staying with Jamie Drysdale. I think Drysdale is obviously, at this point, looking like the second best defenseman in this draft. I do like Sanderson better. Yes, Drysdale has played more in the NHL, but I do think Sanderson will play a bigger role and have a bigger dynamic than Drysdale long term. That's still apparent as it was during the draft. But there's certainly lots to like about Drysdale for sure. He is going to play a big role for the Ducks down the line, and that pick still makes a lot of sense where it is today. Number 7 was the Devils pick, where they picked Alexander Holtz. They are going to still pick a Devil, and he's Dawson Mercer. Dawson Mercer's moved up in this draft a lot at 18 up to 7. For me, he's been a great find for them in that role. 77 points in his first 139 games. Mercer's had a great impact on this Devils team, and I think if they could do a do-over, they probably would swap those picks and might not be, as upset with Holtz his development so far if they would have got him a little bit lower. But it's hard to say if they didn't take him there and they took Mercer, if he was still available at the next pick. The number 8 pick, which was originally the Sabres and Jack Quinn, I would now have the Sabres taking Anton Lundell. Jack Quinn still has, like I said, has a lot of potential, but Lundell's almost further along in his progress here. The former number 12 pick would move up to number 8 in this redraft, and is very impressive, and he's solid both ends of the ice. 71 points in 116 games. Looks pretty good. It would be doing even better in Buffalo right now than what they're getting from Quinn. Long term, though, could Quinn catch up and maybe make that pick look better? It's certainly still possible. Like I said, we're only in the third year removed from this draft taking place. Number 9, I'm taking Seth Jarvis this time around. Of course, that was the Minnesota pick where they took Marco Rossi. Like I said, that's been not things haven't gone the way they were hoping for. That much we can say for certain. Some of it is health related, and some of it I do wonder just how much impact that's really had on him. Because he was such a promising prospect coming into the Ottawa 67s organization. The Austrian forward just struggled to really get the consistency going, where Jarvis was able to jump up and grab a role immediately on a fairly deep Canes team as well. And he's become a favorite there for Rod Brindamore and a consistent top 6 player with 70 points in his first 124 games, where he went from 13 up to 9 in this redraft. And at number 10, I'm leaving that one the same as well. The Jets took Cole Perfetti before. I still think Cole Perfetti went exactly where he should have been 3 years later. Perfetti's been a nice pickup. Long term will certainly have a top 6 role. Things are only going to continue to grow for him. Between his first 69 games, he's top 6, sometimes top 9. But there's certainly some players ahead of him on that depth chart that have uncertain futures with that franchise. So his role is going to certainly grow even more as guys like Wheeler and possibly Scheifele or Dubois all speculated to maybe be moving on possibly in the next year or possibly 2. So that's going to only grow for him as he continues to become a more defined, experienced player here over the next couple of years. Perfetti will have a big role with the Jets, no doubt. I mean, there's, like I said, some other players that didn't make my top 10, like a Braden Schneider and a Caden Gooley. But you know what? They will certainly be what you'd call other very notable prospects that would definitely move up. With Gooley going 16, he definitely would go up at least a few spots. With Schneider going at 19, he could definitely go up a few spots here as well. Like I said, Askarov with the pick from the Predators, which was 11. It's hard to say right now because he's only had the one NHL game, but he still has a very, very bright future. In a couple of years' time from now, we might look at this completely different once we know what his true NHL, portrait or picture looks like once he gets a chance to play more. So we'll see. But certainly, like I said, Rossi and Holtz, by far the 2 players that have been the slowest development and the most disappointing results thus far. But like I said, there are some things, especially with Rossi, that make sense. I hate to pick on a kid who's obviously had a lot of health issues, but it's been a while since he's been over those. And I do wonder, though, how much that impacted him missing all that time. It was substantial. And even though Jack Quinn's no longer a top 10, I think he can work his way back into it once he gets a chance to play more over the next year or so. So let me know your thoughts on this 2020 NHL redraft. What do you think of my selections? Where would you put these players here today? Fun to look back and see how things would go and look differently, as a lot of these guys would be on different NHL teams. But obviously, we can't do that. This is strictly for fun and entertainment purposes. So let me know your thoughts, and we'll discuss them in the comments. If you're new to this channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.